We're here at the MIT Media Lab exploring the NeuraFutures exhibit.
NeuraFutures brings brain-computer interface sci-fi to life, and it's such a great way to talk about ethics and drive innovation in the field.
Let's check it out.
Hey BCI guys and gals, you may have seen our most recent video that we did with Nataliya about her NeuraFutures installation at the MIT Media Lab. We just had such a great time with that video. I mean, Nataliya was amazing. She is so enthusiastic about this project, and we ended up getting a ton of footage that you didn't see in that video. If you haven't seen that video, we recommend you check it out before watching this. You'll see it tagged up in the top. And just as a little recap, this project, NeuraFutures, is about creating sci-fi media pieces where brain-computer interfaces appeared in sci-fi, bringing it to life, creating physical versions of it, but also categorizing. They did over 450 pieces of sci-fi media, categorizing that, analyzing it, and talking about how realistic it is, and a whole bunch of other factors that you'll see. But anyway, we got hours of content out of this. I think it ended up being like 3 hours. And there was just so much good stuff that for anybody who's interested, I wanted to be able to share a little bit more of it. So I've been putting together, it'll be about an hour, I've been putting together an hour video that is just a tour given by Nataliya of her installation, and here it is. This is what I'm going to show you. I'm also at the end going to go through her website a little bit, which you can see right over here, because they have so much information in there. Again, 450 pieces of sci-fi media. That's everything from movies and television shows to books, and I think even a couple poems in there. So it's really amazing that they have done all of that work, and I'm going to walk you through that website, because if you can't make it to the physical installation, I really recommend checking this out, and there are even some ways that you can help.
Hi, it's great to meet you.
Hi, great to meet you too.
Great to meet you, Nataliya.
Hi guys.
This is Nataliya. She's the project lead of the NeuraFutures exhibition.
Welcome.
Thank you for having us.
Thanks for coming over.
Yeah, no, it's wonderful. Could you tell us a little bit more about what this exhibit is?
Yeah, so this exhibit, NeuraFutures, is actually about the future and science of brain-computer interfaces. There is a lot of different, extremely cool sci-fi media depicting different BCI systems, as we're going to see in a bit. However, a lot of them are pretty dark and dystopian and depressing, and in a lot of cases people think that it's going to be so far away. But as we're going to discover, that's not always true. So welcome to our NeuraFutures project. We have analyzed more than 450 different media pieces. But before we dive right into some of the examples, I do want to highlight this amazing collage that one of the team members, Cassie Shire, actually put together with myself, where we call it BCI history. BCI is a term we use for this installation to talk about brain-computer interfaces that are explicitly depicted in science fiction media. That's where it comes from, BCI. The very first mention of BCI is actually 1641, Descartes' Meditations. He was talking about this very famous concept, a brain in a jar, that you can take out the brain, put it somewhere, and it will just function, think, and we're going to carry on. However, only in 1875 there was actually electrical activity discovered in animals. And then in 1923-24, Berger very famously made that paper about EEG, or electroencephalography, one of the still, up to this day, 2022, a core way of measuring brain signals from human body. So as you can see, and please check this collage on our website, there is a lot of amazing events. And science fiction was trying to catch up with some of these events, obviously. Moving forward, I'm going to highlight you the piece that everyone knows about. That is The Matrix, the cult, of course. 1999, I have watched this movie 17 times. That's why I decided to do brain-computer interface research. I decided that I will do one day Matrix. But that's not the reason why this piece is here. It's specifically, we wanted to actually put it out as close to real body as possible, so people can actually look how those implants would look on them. A lot of people are fascinated by implants. I have a very specific opinion about those. That's why I'm doing non-invasive brain sensing. But the challenge here, and what I'm encouraging the public to think about, is that these are parts of your body, meaning that they will be inherently your part of body as your limb. And because of that, if something happens and you will need to take this one out, you might lose a sense of agency. Example, 2019, one of the companies actually was recalled. So FDA forbids them continuing doing their brain implants. So 17 people were actually having those implants in their brains. And what happened is that people were coming back to the hospitals to get those implants taken from their brains. Excellent article in New Yorker, again the link is on our website, where you can actually read how people felt broken, depressed, and stressed by the fact that someone took a part of themselves. So this is a piece to just encourage this thinking. Next set, you might recognize it here. This is coming from very famous universe X-Men, a Cerebra and a Magneto helmets. They're both helmets, but they're actually also coming together not only because they are within the same universe, which is excellent, but also because they're doing completely opposite activity. Cerebra, for those who haven't seen, and I'm very jealous if you haven't, actually does allow for telepathic abilities. So you can actually read someone else's mind. But Magneto helmet will actually prevent any type of telepathy used onto you. That's why it's so excellent. You have the tool, but you also have a sort of cerebral defense, anti-tool, protection tool. And it's very rare when we see in sci-fi these depictions when you have one and then the opposite of one. And that's why I actually personally, one of my favorites as a setup. You might have recognized this one, that is Total Recall. And we tried to make it as real size as possible. Don't do it if you come over, I will be very unhappy. It's a very fragile piece, took a lot of time for us to do it. But you might recognize 1984 was redone, obviously with Arnold Schwarzenegger as the star, and then with Colin, I believe 2009. Implanting memories, what could be more spooky than that, I guess. Fun fact, we still cannot do that. However, there is a lot of research ongoing where we are talking about deassociating memory from the emotion. So this concept of erasing memories is impossible so far. But what we can do, a lot of experiments have been done on mice primarily, but there is also a couple studies on humans where a person would be exposed to electrical shock or beta blockators, so a drug, and let's say you would want to touch something or be in a room like a maze, a classic experiment for mice setup, and then you would be shocked, or a mouse would be shocked. And you would associate whatever you were doing with this painful activity. And then you will be basically having another stimulation, so this dissociation of pain would disappear. So that's where the research is currently. So that's exactly a little shout out about the memory erasing and manipulation. It is much more fragile and to some extent much closer than we think, but not at the level of Total Recall just yet. So now we have a smaller set of actual real size props, and the main star here is Star Trek, of course. Star Trek in itself has more than 50 different denominations of brain sensing. That is like the star of BCIs. I don't think any single show, maybe except Fringe, actually outperformed Star Trek. I'm a fan. I know there's still tons of cool, successful TV series are now ongoing. So these are all actual made to the size based on the TV series. And they're very interestingly, whatever you see here from Star Trek, especially these 3 data port, stereo transceiver, and neural stimulators, they're actually all medical use cases. So we are kind of getting a bit closer to the very core, how BCIs actually started when these first usages were appearing. So we're actually getting much, much closer to them. The ones that are actually form factor-wise much more realistic. And here are hair combs and hair clips. So this one is from our super fun TV series Warehouse 13. They actually have quite a few BCIs. And this one from one of my most favorite TV series, Rick and Morty. What I like about this specifically is, well, this one is consciousness transfer and emotion transfer, so it's a bit far-fetched for the little hair comb, but the idea is that because they actually do touch your head, and also as most of the Star Trek ones, and they're actually very acceptable in today's world, especially this hair clip, they're actually getting much closer to the real form factor you can actually see right now on the street on someone else. Not on me, I have short hair, but actually on someone who has longer hair. You would need to really have a good contact, obviously not with the hair, with the skin, but you could pick up potentially something. This is one of my most favorite pieces, and this is Brain Slug from Futurama, 2000. It's also made to the size, and I actually do wear it for Halloween costumes, to be honest. I have a little one. It does stick to the head, and what it does in the Futurama show, it would take over your control. But what is cool about this is the form factor. So that's a life form. So that's something as a living creature. And we will see some of them later on in the installation, but I think this is very powerful because this is where brain sensing might actually go for. We talk a lot about AI and machine, and BCI in C stands for computer, but I would almost replace with X. It's BXI, because it might not be a computer, or it can be a computer, just a life form computer, another brain, for example. So, love this little guy, one of my favorite pieces, just because of that, not because of the scenario it actually, unfortunately, dystopian it depicts. So this setup, they're different, but they're pretty cool. So I guess we can start with obviously one of the most iconic pieces of Star Trek, which is Visor. And Visor is actually, again, more healthcare related one. This is restoration of vision and enhancement of vision. And we are getting close. You can see that reality factor is actually 77%. So we're not yet there, but it really does get closer and closer, which is really exciting. I personally do love out, I guess, all of them here, the Tiara and the Dr. Octopus. So Tiara, you might know, or not, actually the piece was introduced in 1942, where Wonder Woman could control her invisible plane using Tiara. And that actually inspired me to do in my PhD projects on drone control using brain activity. And fun fact, as we know, obviously, in 2011, University of Minnesota did introduce brain control for the drone, so that was exciting. They had very high accuracy, so I do love the form factor. Again, though it is a Tiara, form factor is very reminiscent of the different headbands we have nowadays, which are very common form factor for wearable or more wearable, low-cost brain sensing solutions, which is hardware. Stara is here, so some of you might recognize. There is a smaller version, there is a huge version in the Suicide Squad, and the idea here is very similar to the Brain Slug. It's a life form. Again, same principle as Brain Slug. I don't know what does the sci-fi creators have against living forms. Why does it need to take over human brain and take over the whole humanity? But that's the same idea. It jumps on your face, takes over you. But again, as we did talk about Brain Slug, that's an excellent idea in itself, having a new, actually interesting form factor. Dr. Octopus, it's one of the pieces I love from telepathy perspective. So obviously Cerebro is very common and famous one, but Dr. Octopus, I would say, is as famous. He can control extensions of his limbs using his brain activity, so telepathically. I think it's excellent because of this idea of enhancement, that you can enhance your abilities or anyone's abilities, and you can then actually control them. So obviously, again, the depiction is pretty dramatic and depressing in there. I'm not going to spoil for those who was not exposed to Dr. Octopus, but I think it's very interesting to actually think about it. And a lot of exoskeletons actually work on BCIs is around this control of external limbs or that didn't belong to you or didn't belong to your human body. It's very expensive research. A lot of people are like, so when do those exoskeletons come over? a lot of labs do work on those. It is very expensive research. So I do believe it's like millions of dollars just like floating for 2-3 users being, like patients being controlled. But they're used in so many applications, specifically for restoration, post-stroke rehabilitation, so applications are really powerful. Going a bit lower here, one of the pieces definitely a lot might recognize, which is Johnny Mnemonic, that helmety idea, and also its implant as well in his brain, where the hero can actually upload data in his brain, carry that data securely, then offload the data, and sometimes he might need to pay with his memories for the data because there is not enough storage. We know not enough storage problem, but obviously 95, very futuristic. A lot of things to talk about. I highly recommend actually checking out the movie. But this is an idea of knowledge upload. It's something slightly different from everything we have seen before because, well, ultimately knowledge upload, you're getting something in your head. We are doing this all time, every time, but obviously ultimate idea is that you can just plug in and get it all up and running. However, what we are trying to do today in research, we're trying to accelerate memory and actually having this knowledge consolidated in brain so we can actually use it effectively. So a lot of simulations like a smell simulation, so you would actually learn new foreign language and you would have exposure to smell. This is obviously far away from this futuristic implanted helmety idea, but I think we are, again, it's not the most far-fetched one. We are using it today, we're using a lot of methods, a lot of ideas we already tried, and they're actually pretty powerful. So again, not as far, but definitely much more, writing, reading from the brain to the brain is definitely, this is the interface, which is pretty powerful. What is definitely interesting is this concept of paying with your memory if you need to store more data. That's very questionable, very questionable. Zootrope, some might recognize actually Zootrope. It's an actual form factor, so it's an actual piece. It was designed, for those who know, actually, I believe I can even get it out for you guys. Yeah. So it's an actual piece. So this piece, it is called Zootrope. I highly recommend you checking. This, I believe, was, and you definitely would want to check me on this date, 1830, 1840, the idea of actually having images moving. So it is a cinema piece, actually. So cool. That's exactly how it was, and that's exactly how you would see, as you can see, those images moving real fast. So very, very exciting. So it's actual piece you can have, you can buy it. It's so very fun.
Yeah, can we get a?
Yeah, but.
I gotta go.
Yeah, awesome. But the idea in this piece, specifically why it is here, so Zootrope is an actual piece, so check it out, get yourself one, it's very fun. They are sold with a lot of images, so I can actually, I'm just like checking images here, they're moving fast, so almost like a movie. But Zootrope in Warehouse 13, which is a piece I already mentioned, actually has a lot of interesting BCIs. That's a consciousness transfer. Once you look at the piece, it will basically read all my memories, all my consciousness will store it here, and then you can actually take the piece, like, go ahead, and you would right now actually read all of my memories and my consciousness into your brain.
Very cool.
Yeah, so that's exactly how it would work, and that's exactly how it works. Yep, in Warehouse 13. So I love the form factors, exactly back to our conversation earlier with Harrison about the different form factors. That's actual form factors. The first time, the only piece I saw so far that does it, but actually pretty smart when you think about the idea of the form factor. They have AI in the TV series, and I'm not going to spoil further. So they're actually, it's a TV series that is pretty advanced. They have AI and digital clones and whatnot. But I love the idea how they actually depicted this completely novel form factor, and it has some sense to it of depicting moving images. And the last two pieces here, so this might be the ones that a lot of you recognize. The very famous, actually only one piece is of the interest in this one, it's the Mind Stone, of course. That is a form factor, the idea, I'm not gonna again spoil. Mind Stone, for what it says, does control reality, so let's stop it there. What I like is the idea that other stones no spoilers, would actually enhance the abilities of the Mind Stone. Again, extremely interesting form factor. It's a stone, literally, it's a gemstone. And then here, another Star Trek piece. Love this one. It's a thought maker. It will manipulate your thoughts, and you will encrypt whatever other thought you want on a person who is just looking at this one. So interesting form factor of a sphere ball, and it lit up, and it's very interesting. So this little pedestal over here is example of drug-based brain interfaces. You might have recognized they are oversized here, so you would actually definitely see them in the movies. They are smaller. These are red blue pills, and this is the serum from Divergent. So the idea in actually both of them, interestingly enough, you would enter another reality. In Matrix, again, try not to spoil for those who haven't seen, the idea is that you would physically actually transport your consciousness to another reality altogether, to real reality. And in the serum, in the Divergent, you would have a full simulation, and it would be so realistic that you would actually believe that you are reliving it. But it's temporarily, it's a drug use. Why it is interesting, why they actually beat apart, that's because drugs, as you might have guessed, and we did mention this example already, can be used as a way of, for example, blocking memory, releasing memory, manipulating emotions in different ways. Again, manipulation here is the word in experimental research use, but as you can imagine, there is a lot immediately of ethical considerations jumping on us here. How would someone prescribe those? How would they be used? A lot of dosages you can see, especially in earlier papers, are dangerous for humans, so human trials were even never attempted. But that experiment earlier on where mice would be actually engaged in the maze solving setup, and then they would be electrocuted, and then they would actually be simulated with a drug to actually block the memory of pain, to redo the maze. That was a drug example. And again, this was attempted on humans using beta blockators. So that's an interesting example. So I think, again, when you think about it, it's altering reality, and we know a lot of drugs can do that already, but that's why it is much more accessible than you think, and it is less regulated, as some of us obviously know. So I think it's something that really keep an eye. They're definitely much closer than we think in what they're doing, and definitely there will be much more. Awesome examples of delivering drug to specific part of body, of course. Delivering it to the brain, to specific part of the brain would be, I think, very, very interesting. And some early research is already underway, and some human trials are already underway. Again, check the papers on our website. But I would say that we really need to start thinking about stricter regulations. We might have learned the lessons from other medical scandals over the past decade and learn some lessons out of those. Yeah. To the next cabinet here, we have some super cool pieces actually we haven't seen just yet. Guys, real quick, not gonna spend too much time on the Force. Fun fact, you can see here that the form factor of the Force is life form. And this is like one of the tropes of Star Wars. What is it, metaphysical, spiritual? Is it something alive in the blood stream, literally? So that's obviously a very, very famous concept. If you haven't been exposed to Star Wars, I highly recommend. But it's also ultimately this idea of brain sensing, that you would actually be consciously aware of your thoughts, and then you would see maybe result of that activity, and like controlling an object and a robot and whatnot. And I do feel that the Force actually kind of nicely illustrates this concept, like, hey, you are really constantly aware of what you're thinking about. Sounds crazy, but we are not actually always constantly aware, which is totally fine. That's how our brain is functioning. But here it would be really seeing the result of the activity, what you've been performing actually using the BCI. And here it's metaphorical. There is like somewhere in your blood. Cortical stack, one of my other favorite pieces. This is actually the first piece we made out of the whole installation. And so it's actually 3 times magnified. It's a implant that will go on the back of your neck, and it's a consciousness transfer piece. So pretty unrealistic. Very interesting. What I love about this piece is that there is a movie, there is a TV series actually, and also there is a book, Altered Carbon. And what is amazing about it is that in the book, they spent a lot of time talking about societal repercussions of consciousness transfer and also religion. It's extremely interesting because you don't see this in all the books, and obviously it's very rarely being touched upon in the movies or TV series. But the idea of cortical stack, it's a copy of the consciousness, and you would just then take the stack and put in something that they call sleeve, meaning another body. It can be a clone body, but it can be a body of someone who died and donated their body. So they call it a sleeve. And the idea, and what the book talks about very nicely is, okay, you can copy your consciousness once, 2 times, 3 times, but are you actually gonna copy to do what? To relieve it? And what if the person who you love, your family member, your loved one, would not want to do that? Or what they show very nicely in Altered Carbon, societally, you will just not have money either to get a sleeve or to get your sleeve, meaning that a lot of people who were, for example, 5-year-old children were put in a body of 80-old-year lady. And that's the sleeve that was available for people who are poor. But if you are very rich, ultra rich, you will have a copy of your body in 75 different variations and representations. So excellent, excellent piece to watch and to read about religious repercussions. If you forbid your consciousness to be reproduced the moment it is possible, you can put a stamp on your body, I do not want that. It's almost kind of on our driving licenses. In case of an accident, you can use my organs for science or donation. That's kind of the same. You cannot use my consciousness. You cannot make a copy of myself in digital or physical world. It's almost something you would want to use, but also societally, like, yeah, imagine we have access to this tech. You do understand that there will be differences when people would want to have it will have no access, or people who have access will do and maybe potentially abuse it, as it was shown in Altered Carbon. And ultimately, question of God for those of us who are actually watching, of course, and do believe whatever you believe in. If you do believe in higher power, whatever you name it, is it the God who put you there, who let you create this piece? Can you reproduce their creation, the creation of God? Super philosophical, super interesting, very deeply religious when you think about it and when you read it. Highly recommend. This shelf here is our memory erasing shelf. We already talked about erasing memories, not possible per se. Brain does a great job of blocking out memories. That might, be detrimental to our development. But we talked about how we can erase potentially an emotional reaction to a memory. And of course, a big challenge with it, we would want to do it in the time the memory happened. So ultimately, if you think about a soldier that is experiencing an awful accident of their friends, colleagues being killed, you would want the stimulation happen at the time of the accident, which, as you can imagine, in that environment is not really possible, at least at the moment at all. But definitely, what is very powerful about these pieces, and I'm going to get it out actually. Specifically, this piece is a neuralizer, memory neuralizer from Men in Black. So I believe we can actually activate it.
That's really awesome.
And now I don't remember anything. But the idea why I actually did that, yeah, it's a nice one. It's also because a lot of simulations, though, as I mentioned, is used with electroshock, obviously very dangerous. The light stimulation is actually also pretty powerful, different frequencies of light. There are quite a few papers right now actually having some promising research in mice of, trying to see how we can improve memory or to this extent erase emotional, response to some of the memories. Light is another way of stimulation, in addition to drugs, in addition to electrical stimulation. So actually, to be honest, that's actually their form factor you can use, except it's not going to do it in itself, but you can literally put something flickering here and just put it there. You would still need to do whole memory reproduction and experimental setup.
Yeah, I know brainwave patterns follow like flickering lights and stuff.
Yeah.
So like steady state visually evoked potentials are like looking at a flashing light at like a certain frequency, and your brain actually emits that.
Yeah, there is an excellent researcher. We are collaborating with them actually. I let one out in her lab, and they're looking at the flow, and I highly recommend her TED talk. And in that talk, she's actually talking about different patterns, and that the brain sometimes would not follow these patterns. You know, you might know that 1/8 of a second you would actually not see the images around you, but your brain supports you to not get you super scared, spooked. So it reconstructs the image for you, and you're like, yeah, this is my reality. But actually, each 1/8 of a second, you actually don't see anything whatsoever. And so she's exploring with her lab the fact that in some cases, this frequency is actually broken, and how we can potentially rewire the brain to get back on track or maybe enhance it in some ways. So it's actually super interesting research. So this, again, light is a very powerful feedback but also stimulation modality used obviously in a lot of cases in psychoanalysis. It is dating. Again, check those papers and check the TED Talk. I do have the link for those at our neurofutures.com website. Obviously, very similar to the Men in Black piece, also erasing memory. They're all kind of similar form factor. Fun fact, you really need to point something in someone's face. Like, yeah, this piece is really kind of almost the same on the form factor. It's a gun, but also erasing your mind. And basically, same thing. You look at it and you don't remember anything.
Some effects, Mike, of like the...
Oh yeah, actually, it did have, but it's actually inside, yeah, so you can actually put as in Rick and Morty. Yeah, I do have a sweet soft spot for Rick and Morty, but again, form factor-wise, it is the same idea, and it's interesting that execution is very similar as well in the form factor-wise. We are getting to one, I guess, of the spookiest of them all. This is DC Mini Paprika. That's an anime, and I highly recommend watching it. Cool thing about it, that's what it does. That is a little around ear hook that would actually go, I'm just gonna get it as well. Why not? Again, it's made a bit bigger, but the idea is that this is a hook you would just put behind your ear and you will sleep with it. And that's a dream interfacing. And what is interesting, obviously, is that research right now does move forward a lot, including in our lab on dream incubation, so how you can potentially control for dream studies, but also potentially, engage in some memory that is related to the dreams that you were dreaming about, some objects, how you can potentially suggest an object and then get people creative that they would dream about this object. If a prop would suggest you think about a tree and you would dream about it, and then you'd wake up and your hands would become a tree or something like that. So again, check the website to learn more about this actual research. But what is very important here is, though it is emerging again, it's on and off, it's the ethical considerations, because if someone could potentially suggest something while you sleep, like you have an Alexa in your bedroom, it's okay if it only suggests you to buy something, but if it will suggest you something much more, dangerous and something actually that can put in danger you or your partner or your loved ones. So that's also, and as a result of advertising ongoing right now, dream and sleep engineering is definitely having their way out, but research is very exciting. A lot of form factors, as you saw right now, is actually becoming wearable. You can have them at home. You don't need to go in the sleep clinic to have all of the sensors, and you can be hooks, literal ear hooks, so form factor is actually pretty close. Could be little headbands you can sleep with and have your different stages of sleep and see. So they are very innocent, very nice to help you better understand your sleep. We spend one side of our lives sleeping, so it actually all makes sense after all. However, this is the train and the wagon that I just mentioned. This is really leaving the station. So we would want to jump on regulating that one and what could be done and what cannot be done, specifically in different stages of sleep faster than later. Real quick about this one, this is again example of a form factor that is very unusual. Like we have stacks and implants, but we have a pearl, another gemstone. Literally, it's a pearl, goes into your ear, so it's in-ear interface, another real BCI form factor. Pearl goes into your ear, attaches to inner ear. During this phase of attachment, you will have nightmares for several nights. And then you can be manipulated. You can be brainwashed. You will sign whatever documents you want to. They need to be signed and whatnot. And what is interesting is that if it's not being actually taken out, you can actually die while having it. It will really suck it all out. Again, pretty unrealistic right now, but there is a lot of in-ear work, being published, a lot of ideas. It's not as easy in real BCIs to do in-ear research because of the anatomy of your ears. So there's a lot of labs trying to do in-ear epilepsy tracking or having like more generic in-ear interface. So form factor is actually pretty interesting to having something inside of your ear because it's actually very close to your brain per se. Nostrils, eyes, mouth, ears are very close. Then last but not least, the heads. Another excellent form factor, very close to the hair clips we touched upon earlier, because these are real form factors you can wear. Obviously, one of them, which is the sorting hat from Harry Potter, maybe is less realistic, but this is the coolest for kids and adults alike. And we have actually built one here at the lab. We will talk about it. We built a real one. Yeah, with actual EEG sensors inside. However, again, if you take a more unconspicuous form factor of a hat, that's a Westworld hat. That's a hat you wear on a regular basis. That's a hat they actually used in the movie. And that one makes a copy of your consciousness again. But the idea here, it touches your head, and you can get actual brain data out of it. So again, form factor makes it very close to reality, not the scenario, but the form factor. Something we definitely want to think more about. Good. So shout out here to Rinaka. She pulled this one out because it is real size. And if you check Star Trek 1977, that's an ancient applaud knowledge helmet of all ancient knowledge. So this piece, that's like everyone can use it, very futuristic. Yeah. So yeah, it's all like 3D printed, painted, but the idea of this helmet is that, you just put it on and the knowledge just floats in your brain. That's, I guess, perfect setup for a lot of us. By the way, there's quite a few scenarios actually overall in Sci-Fi, in BCI-Fi, where you would want to applaud specifically knowledge regarding to school or schooling, and this is pretty popular helmet. So yeah, this was actually set up in Smithsonian in 1990, so the year I was born. So funny, but we decided just to make our own. So moving to another set of pedestals, and here again we have some helmets. As you have guessed, helmets are still a prevailing BCI-Fi form factor. So we have very different use cases we really need to talk about. So this is from The Simpsons. That's actually the case that goes with the tank of water, and you will get into another altered reality in the dreamland to help save your friend. So again, not gonna spoil this one, but very close to the form factors of tank of water is actually being exposed to the water is seen in a lot of BCI-Fis as a form factor to get better signal, to actually have this change of reality. And it's specifically tanks of water are used for reality changing. So Fringe, another very famous TV series, actually I believe filmed here in Boston if I'm not mistaken, also use tank of water to get to another reality. So literally, and this is also like a BCI system.
Very cool.
In these ones, oh yeah, a lot to talk about. So both these helmets are coming from Rick and Morty. This one is called Mytholog helmet. It's a relationship helmet. You put it on and it will generate you a representation of how you see your love partner in your brain in real time. So without spoilers, when they put it on, there was a huge monster with 20 tentacles there. Not gonna spoil it. So as you can see, that therapy went real bad for the planet the therapy took place on.
Okay, so this is the most dystopian out of all the
Honestly, but that's the thing. It is the most dystopian because imagine you pull literally your thoughts out and you visualize them about how you can feel about a person in that moment. That's like a lot of therapies, obviously relationship therapies, using different setups and suggestions and exercises. I have started reading about different bracelets, like, Fitbit style bracelets that would sync your heartbeat and whatnot. I haven't seen yet BCI for relationship. However, I saw in research papers engaging in different conversations and maybe seeing emotions. I do think it was from 2 years ago from using Open BCI and AR. I believe it was a HoloLens. But it's just like two very gimmicky visualization. Yeah. But if you would imagine, again, I think something, and whatever I would think will get visualized and become real scene in real life, that's very dystopian. It's what we want to think. Ultimately, our thoughts are all real. Do we want others to see them? Do we want to see other thoughts? That's a lot of questions here.
Okay, now unlike this one, I would really like to have this one, the IQ.
You don't. No,
no?
you don't. No. You don't. No, you don't. You
From
do.
the name, it looks like I do.
Oh,
so
IQ enhanced in helmet. Oh, yeah. So first of all, that's a real size one. It's for dog. But no, don't take it bad. Well, first, yeah, that's basically what will happen. That you'll put it on a dog, and your dog will become really very careful to listen in what you wanted to do. That was the whole premise. So if you tell the dog, go out, go back, sit next to me, the dog will execute everything what you want because it will understand you perfectly. However, that's not what happened. In the episode, again without any spoilers, the dog became very smart, built its own army of other dogs, built a better helmet, built an exoskeleton. I have one little copy in my office actually. I love this dog. Called Snuffles, but you need to know it by the name of Snowball. And again, the consideration here, you put, and this is another like pretty dystopian if you think about it. We do a lot of studies. I do not work with animals, but there is a lot of labs do research with animals, and that is acceptable. There are norms, there are RBs to do that. However, once this goes out, and you would put it on someone, an animal or a human, who cannot give you the explicit consent. In a lot of cases, and we should really think about it carefully, ALS use case, I do have multiple patients who have ALS in some of the stages that are very advanced, where they obviously have loved ones who care about them, who love them, and they would sign the documents and consent forms because they have those, signatures validated and approved by the different, notaries and services. So it's all legal. It's all as it is. But ultimately, in that case, we still cannot ask the person. So that's why all those things are in place. But you would put it, I would put it on a person with the consent and signatures. So all good. But do they ultimately want it, even if it gives them that ability to communicate? We cannot right now do communication for ALS patients, unfortunately. We can do yes, no, we can do very basic things. Research is definitely moving forward. There is implanted versions where you can type phrases and sentences. It definitely moves forward significantly. However, as of now, we cannot really restore. We can support basic communication like yes and no. Yeah. But the idea is that if you do not really have a consent and you still put it on, again, animal or person or any other living creature for that matter, do you have the right to do that? Right. Even if legally you are all good, protected, signed up and sealed deal. So it's a good one to think about. And ultimately, what it can lead to is a dog case. It created army, almost wiped the whole humanity. Well, it can kind of happen to us as well if we just randomly create something, which exactly that was in the episode. The researcher did it within a second, put it on, and ran to do some other fun stuff. It was definitely fun, but that's what happened. Yeah, exactly. So actually it has a little highlight that it is a real device. Yeah. It's actually a real device they used in the movie, so it is actually written there. But obviously in the movie, which is Reminiscence, the idea there, it's again post-apocalyptic, all depression, all dystopian. It's really, again, on the limit of what would you even imagine. You would put this on to relieve memories. It's not possible with the system. The system is a 14-channel EEG. You can purchase it. You would just record brain activity. You can do different applications. They do, I believe, have an API and whatnot. So actually, for beginners, might be a good toy to play. It's not modular, so you cannot really move it a lot, but it's a good one. But you cannot relive memories. That's what the idea in the movie is about. You would relive memories. But that's what a lot of sci-fi is doing. They just will take the form factor as it is, and they're just going to record it, and it might do crazy things. It might do exactly the same things that the headset is designed for.
Very cool.
And last but not least, Black Mirror. Of course, we couldn't not have this installation without Black Mirror. This one is called Mushroom, and this is the piece that overlays some images on top of actual reality, so we can call it AR to this matter, and you would see those images within the gameplay, and they would be, again, without a lot of spoilers, some different emotional alerts that your body might produce. You might get scared by those or very unhappy with those, and in the very end, as in all the Black Mirror episodes, this is not a spoiler alert, it ends bad. bad. However, what I love about this piece, well, it kind of touches a bit of augmenting of reality and vision. However, it's the form factor, so it actually does go exactly as you see here. So this is the prop that is a part of the headrest of the car, and it's a chair in their case. So what is great and might be followed upon is this is an emerging trend of actual BCIs to have them in automotive systems, so in the cars, as to support the driver in their drowsiness states, but also the idea of once we all will become drivers, actually passengers, because it will be level 3, level 4 autonomous driving, how we can maybe get different games and engagement and interactivity. So headrest ultimately is actually the form factor that is being depicted by researchers in brain sensors, specifically in the UK and in Germany, where they are looking into embedding sensors, real BCI sensors, in the headrest to pick up brain activity. So that's why this form factor is so interesting per se. And obviously it's almost in this case, and some people do mention it directly, as a contactless BCI, because you don't always stick your head to the headrest. So the idea is, can you still pick up something if it's not touching your head? Obviously, the Saint Grail of BCIs, can you actually not wear it? Yeah. And that's something I think very important to think about. Obviously, we already touched upon automotive real quick. This is just one of the use cases, but there's a lot to think about. However, in this case, what is interesting is that tech might replace the camera use, and cameras being pretty invasive might record passengers. If you want the data to be only from one person and the person consented, and potentially the data is being used to protect other actors on the road. For example, if you are being under some substance or you have been drinking a bit too much in the restaurant, that interface potentially can be life-saving. Again, we're not going to get into potential dystopian use cases of law enforcement to be misusing this. So again, it's an interesting utopian, dystopian, depending on how legislation would go, where it will land, but there is a lot to think about, because ultimately it can be life-saving, literally, waking you up while you're driving, no cameras, so we're not going to pick up your pet, your child, your significant other on the city. It will be only you. We will keep you safe, we'll keep them safe, other cars around with other people around safe, but again, can this be used in court against you? And speaking about different names in BCI file like Mushroom, I do encourage everyone to actually check the website if you want to also get inspired by the names. So we already talked with you, Harrison, about different form factors. You can check all of those, infographics. However, on the website, we also have something called Brain Cloud, And when you click on it, it actually shows you the whole set of names that BCI, so science fiction of brain sensing, used to name their props. So these are all real. Obviously, this is a word cloud. It would enhance you the words that are more common, like neural, surprise, surprise, but you would see all of them here. And again, obviously, if you click on it, you would actually see all of the highlights, and you are getting access to the database. So database highlights all 450 sci-fi media pieces, which are novels, TV series, movies, webtoons, and whatnot, and you can read about all of them. Again, designed manually, you would read about what the piece is about without spoilers, see some images, so what is the piece about, what does it do, how it looks in the movie, and you obviously can also read about, I don't see it. You can also read, is it invasive, non-invasive, the year, the cover, and more importantly, how far is it from becoming a reality? So that's something, again, I highly encourage to check. And obviously on the website, you will see all of the information about the team, how you can contact us, how to support us, and obviously check all 450 pieces. And so last but not least, the piece of the installation are, of course, real pieces and real research prototypes. What I mean by real pieces are actually BCIs that you can purchase if you want. They're not done by us, but it's from different parts of the world. And fun fact, there are just few that I'm showing here, but they are all for relaxation and well-being. So these fluffy ears is, I guess, one of the most famous ones. They would just stay up and put if you're very focused and go down if you are all disengaged. Got a lot of different awards at Ars Electronica and whatnot. And all of those are actually based on very famous one-channel BCI, and we have a lot to talk about if it is a BCI or not, or if it does pick up brain activity. Maybe it's more muscle activity, but that's how it is advertised. And these are all games. And again, you will only work of those, it's one channel. So if you're relaxed, nothing would happen. If you're very focused, the little ball, the little drone, and the quadcopter, they will start moving. So that's the whole idea. So interesting enough, all those pieces, some of them appeared in 2009. They're all about relaxation and focus. So very, I would say, user and user-friendly. They are nothing upon the form factors that we have seen here, and obviously there are nothing upon the healthcare challenges that we are actually aiming to solve with brain sensing. And here, last but not least, these are actually research prototypes. They are featured, a bit of shameless promotion from the lab, from our MIT Media Lab, but it's just to show how researchers we are trying to really push and actually get, into some cases, inspired by these pieces. So the first one is a pair of glasses, so form factor that is pretty realistic. It is designed by myself with the team to actually help with attention and focus in one of the scenarios of the driving. So here, thank you. The idea is that you would record behind the ears. So again, the positioning that is kind of where you can actually wear the glasses. But again, back to the reality of brain sensing, this is not a lot of channels that you can get the brain activity. So we're actually adding additional modality. In this case, it's called electroculography. It's eye movements without use of the cameras. This is, and we're not going to get into science of it, but you can check the papers. The idea where if you want to use wearable or design wearable systems, you might need to actually sacrifice the number of sensors you can use. Again, we just discussed, no one is going to run around with 64-channel EEG headset. Nothing bad about it unless it's very expensive and wired, and it's usually gel-based electrodes. So if you want real ones, you would need to think about the form factor, as we already discussed. You would also need to think about where to put those electrodes, and potentially other ways to confirm what type of data are you recording that is real brain data, and potentially enhance your signal using ML and AI. So this is one, and then the thinking cap, the other one here. As I mentioned, we actually have designed this one to enhance and change the mindset of school children. So the idea inside that you do have sensors, EEG sensors, 14 sensors, and you have a speaker, a Bluetooth speaker, and the head would talk to you, but it will not tell you houses, but it will actually tell you that how are you doing in math or how you are doing in other activities.
Really?
And the idea is, this is based on the researcher from Stanford, Carol Dweck, that theorizes a fixed and growth mindset. And the idea is that fixed mindset, when people believe that they are born with a fixed amount of intelligence, imagine there are still people who actually believe that, and then you cannot do anything else. You're born with this amount of intelligence, that's it. And then the growth mindset is you learn, you might make mistakes, but then once you learn from this experience, you will just get this experience and you will just add it to your knowledge base. And so the idea is that we literally replicated one of her studies, except we use the artifact of science fiction, which depicts brain sensing. So this is a very encouraging example where used magic and fiction and science and neuroscience, as we talk about in the paper, to encourage for actual change in the mindset. We have done the study with over 150 children here. And again, they were all consenting. We explained that it is not magic, and they knew that it is actual senses and what they're about to do.
Yes. And how about this?
This bad boy here is actually hallucination headset. You can read a whole PhD dissertation about this one on our website, and basically the PhD dissertation of Dan Novi, who designed this one. It is a simulation of your visual cortex with electrical signals, and you would be able to see simple figures and objects, very simple ones, in the retina of your eye without use of any screen. So it is super cool, super cool. He actually did this study. Took so much time to get this IRB approved. He actually did it with 24 subjects.
He made the TMS device
himself.
himself.
Yes. I mean, he collaborated. It was a collaboration, definitely.
Yeah.
But he actually made this whole thing. Yes.
Amazing.
So I highly encourage
And
you.
he made it look cool too, which I love. Yeah.
I love it as well. Highly encourage to check the It's very easy read also. Like, it sounds like a PhD dissertation. It's really a good, nice read. So highly encouraging. And last but not least, a little cherry on top of this cake to finish the installation. Literally, if you are checking in person or online, I do encourage you to fill out this test we designed, and this has 20 questions. It's about 7 minutes, again, online or here on the iPad in the installation space. And it will ask you actually about the different morals and about different things you would like to experience if any or all of those pieces were a reality. Would you like to have telepathic abilities? Would you want to read someone's memories? Would you want to erase someone's memory about yourself? All of those are questions. There are also questions if the brain sensing is legal or illegal in some countries, because it is actually. And maybe you can guess which are those countries. It's going to be very useful for us to actually know what we as society, people who are actually visiting just passers-by, are thinking about BCI, but also about brain sensing in real life. Thank you.